Okay, so this is a basic instruction video for the mod that I did to the basic mask that is out there, which is perfectly fine. But what I did is I put darts in mine. And the reason I did that was I was assuming for these masks that they're not going to be used over another mask, that they're meant to be the only mask. And because of that, I wanted them to fit closer to the face than this particular style does. This is great, especially if they're using them over another mask, because it's got a lot of room around the face. But if you're just using it as the only mask, it doesn't quite fit close enough, I don't think. So I did took this and put darts above the nose and under the chin, so it stays very close to the face. I also did a little bit bigger size than the original one that I saw, which was a 9x6 rectangle of fabric. I bumped it up by 1 inch both ways for what I call like a small medium size, and then I have a larger size, which is another inch bigger than that. And so yeah, so we'll go through that. This one is a 7 by 10 rectangle. 2 pieces cut together. Most people already know this particular part of the pattern and what's going on with it. The one thing I'm changing is that I found that I wanted people to know what the inside top was of the mask, especially if they're reusing them over and over again. You want to make sure you're putting them on the same way each time, and if they're doing it quickly, they may not. They may be kind of fiddling with it, trying to remember which side was what. So what I'm doing now, instead of just doing the right sides together, which I have been doing, it looks nice and pretty, but it was hard to write on some of the fabrics, especially if they're dark like this one. So now I just do one wrong side and one right side together, so that when it is finished, the inside of the mask will be the unfinished print side, and you can write on it and see it very clearly. So that is something I have changed doing. The elastic I use for the sides, for this particular size, I cut a 13-inch strip of elastic, and then I split it in half to use one on each side. So it's 6.5 inches of elastic on each side when it's sewn in. And then I'm going to take it over there and do the basic sew round if folks don't know what that is right now, and then I'll go on to the pleats, and then lastly to the measurements on doing this, the darts on the face. Okay, so I'm going to show you the the difference between the mask that does not have the darts on it, which again is camera's over here, perfectly fine if you have especially if you have another mask underneath. But this is the one without the darts. Again, there's a lot of room here, and there's definitely room here. It fits okay along the sides, but I wasn't really liking this gapping issue here. And then the one with the darts in it, fits a little bit closer here, and definitely a lot closer under here, but still lots of room. And again, it was meant to be more for, like, this is the only mask someone might be using. Okay, so I have my rectangle of 2 pieces of fabric here. Again, one right side and one wrong side together, like I talked about before. We're going to start on the long side of the fabric because we're going to start our pocket. Have your elastic nearby, and we'll go with that. So I usually start about 2/3 of the way down, and it's probably about I usually follow just the edge of my presser foot, but it can usually about 1/4 inch from the side of the fabric. So let's start. So when I get about close to 1 inch to the edge, this is when I get my elastic going. So again, remember I had that 13-inch piece of elastic. I'm going to split it in half. And you're going to get your first piece of elastic. What you're going to do is open this up, keep your needle down in the fabric. It keeps it from slipping while you're doing this. And then I place it almost on the diagonal, just underneath there in the corner. And we're going to sew over it. Now, I sew over it multiple times because I want to make sure the thing is anchored in there. I don't want it to break on somebody when it's on their face. So I'll go back and forth a few times. And then again, I'm about 1/4 inch off from the edge again, so I'm going to turn it. And we're going to sew down, kind of keep the elastic out of the way to the side there. That's why I had diagonal, so I don't sew over it. Again, about 1/4 inch along the edge. About 1 inch to the end. Keep your needle in place to keep it anchored. And then reach inside and grab this other edge of that elastic, and you're going to kind of pull it over. Again, trying to keep it diagonal just until you tack it in place. It's pretty straightforward. Go over it a few times. Yep. And about 1/4 inch from the edge again. So you're going to do this basically all the way around, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. So let me do that real fast. This is the long side. This is actually the top with the mask too, and you'll see why. So about 1 inch from the edge. Again, take your second piece of elastic on the diagonal, stick it in there, and tack it down. And keep it out of the way for the moment until we get to the edge again. About 1 inch from the edge. Reach inside the pocket. I can hear my husband's stomach growling next to me. Put it in there in that corner and then zip over it. Oh, see, I'm already got it kind of loose there, so give me a second here. Let me back up. So I missed it, so it's okay. I can go back in. Let me loosen it up a little bit. Okay. So for the most part, it's pretty easy to get in there. You just kind of have to hold on to it a little bit. Let me back up here. Get that retacked back down. Okay, so it's in place now. And so we're going to finish this off. We're going to only go to, again, about 1/3 of the way down because we need to leave a little bit of room here to flip the pocket out. So that's that. And we're going to go in and flip it out. So it's easy to do by just kind of going there and finding one of the little elastic strips. If you pull it through. And stretch out your things, make sure they're in place really tight, and it gives you your first piece of the fabric. Here's the sides. The bottom will be that open pocket side. The top will be the closed side. This will be the inside. This will be the outside. And again, I wanted that inside to be lighter so I could write on it. And it doesn't look as pretty, but that's not really the point. So that's the first step. So the next step is putting the pleats in along the sides. There's 3 pleats in total, and it's hard to see in that one, but you'll see 1, 2, and 3 pleats. And I had problems trying to get those fairly even the first time I did it, and then I saw someone that kind of gave a little hint. So if you fold this in half and just kind of do a little temporary fold line, and then fold the top down to that fold line to make another fold line, it gives you a starting point for that first pleat, and then you can kind of go down from there. So usually I tuck right at that first line, and it gives me my first pleat. And as you do more of these, you'll get pretty fast at it, and you might not even need the little starter lines to help you. But pin it in place and then start the next one. I kind of get to where I almost meet the pleat to the edge of this first one, and you can adjust it depending on what works. So there's the first one, this is the second one, and then the last one. And as you're pleating, you may notice, or at least I have noticed, as you do them, they almost create a natural curve because of the pleat, which is a good thing, because when it's on the side of the face, it lays a little bit flatter. So that's one side. You do the same thing to the other side. Again, I kind of start with that first line to help me get going. Now, you may have an easier way, and that's, great. This has just worked for me. So the one thing I forgot to mention is when you are doing your pleats, the fold goes from the top down. So remember, I know I mentioned, but I forgot to mention before while I was folding things. The bottom of the mask is that open pocket area there, and the top is the sewn edge. You're going to go, this is going to be the top, and you're going to do those pleats folding down. And now I'm going to top stitch all the way around, and I usually start on the top left side. So usually go, now when I do the top stitch, especially for the actual top and bottom part of the mask, I'm usually doing about it's about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric, and it's just because it follows the way my foot is, presser foot is. There's a little edge on the inside, and it just keeps it really nice and straight, and it's easier for me to follow. So that's what I do, and it's just a really close top stitch to the edge of the fabric. So let's get started. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. So again, I'm sewing really close to the edge, and it's about an 1/8 of an inch. When you get to the edge, it looks like on the edge, most of the time on the side of the face, I still do about 1/4 inch out, but whatever works for you is fine. Now when you go over these pleats, I have a heavy duty machine, so it's a little bit more industrial and can go over thicker grades of fabric, but for regular sewing machines, just go slow. You might have to walk the foot or walk the needle, and I normally do go over pins, but I've been hitting them, so I've been having to take them out. Okay, so again, I'm going to get close to the edge for the bottom. And make sure your pocket where it's open is kind of tucked in there, so you're going to seal that off. Pleats, especially when you start going the opposite direction, it's easy for the foot to lift them, so you're just going to have to go slow and watch it. I'm trying to get my hands out of the way for you. Okay, back stitch, just stop to lock it. And that. I'll trim all these excess strings later, but that is the first part of the mask. And again, you can stop right there if you just are making masks that are without the darts in there, and they're great for lots of people. And then the next step, I'll show you where the darts are. The next step are the darts, and I do different measurements for the nose versus the chin on the smaller pattern, the medium size one. And then the larger pattern I do, they're actually the same distance for both the top and the bottom. What it ends up being is about, basically there's about 1.5 inches on the top of the between the darts, and then below it's about 2 inches between the darts. What I do is I take, so again, this is the outside of the mask, this is the inside. Differences in the color actually makes it a lot easier to do this too. Remember where your top is, the folds are going down from the top. So this is the top inside edge. And what I do is I fold it in half, find the middle. I put a pin in there just to make it easier on myself. You could do this too with a pencil if you want, or a pen, but I think it's easier just this. Okay, so what I do is I fold my first dart into the middle, and it's basically 1 inch from the pin to that fold, and then I tack it down, and I'm going to end up sewing about an inch down. So I know it's kind of hard to see on here, but basically about 1 inch. Put a pin in about 1 inch, so I know where I'm going to stop my dart. And then what I'm going to do is I'll use my foot to kind of guide me, but I'm going to start at 1/4 inch and work my way all the way down to this stopping point. So then it looks like a little triangle, like a typical dart. And I'll sew one right now. So this is my first dart. Again, this is the top center, and this is the measurement that I did, and I'm going to flip it just because it's easier for me to sew it this way. But I, again, line my foot up on the edge of the fabric, and then I anchor my needle, and then I angle it and turn it, so that I'm going to go from that point to this point, and that'll be my dart. And there's that first dart. And then I'll show you what I do with it. And you're going to repeat it on the same thing on the other side. Again, about 1 inch pleat, dart it, and you'll have 2. In fact, let me just do that right now, just because we'll show you in one step. So see, it's a bit easier to see. So same thing, line up, anchor it, turn it. Okay, and there's dart number 2. Now what I do from here, and again, I'll trim my strings real quick, is you're going to see there's your darts. But obviously you don't want them poking in the people's face. So what I do is I stitch them down. And I do it a certain way. It doesn't really matter which way you flip them. But I've been basically stitching them outwards for the nose and then inward for the chin. And so we're going to do the first one now. And you just have to tack them. You don't really have to go top stitching down the whole thing again. That's just what I'm doing. So go slow over this because it's really thick fabric, and if you don't already have a heavy gauge needle, I definitely recommend that you get one because you might break your needle. And you're just tacking it down. Oh. So the only thing different about the top versus the bottom is that I space them out just a little bit more. So again, fold it in half, find your center point, and I put a pin in it just so I know where my center is. There's a crooked pin in it, but and then this is the inside. So I take it and fold it to the center point, and I usually, for this one, instead of an inch fold, I do an 1.5 inch fold. And after a while you can almost eyeball it, but so that folds an 1.5 inch in. Again, about an inch down is where my end point's going to be when I do my little sew line there. And then same thing for the other side. Again, about an 1.5 inch, and you do the same thing. So it's just like doing the top, but the measurement is just slightly different on the chin. It's a little bit, it's wider. So this is one of the finished ones. The one thing that I really wanted to point out was the reason I switched to flipping the fabric for on the inner side anyways, being the wrong side out, was I wanted to be able to write on them and see them. Now this is a light colored fabric, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I do, and I know this is backwards because of the way it's filming, but it does say top, and I usually do a small, medium, or write the size on there. This is the one we did in the video, and this is the right side, this is the inside, and it's just enough of a difference that you can still write in it and see. So that is why I'm doing that. You can see how I tacked down the little tabs there, and I did it for top and bottom. I do tuck them inward for the chin, and then I tuck them outward for the nose, and I don't think it probably makes a much difference when you're actually wearing it. It's just the way that I did it, and I keep doing it. So you can do it however you want to do it. I'll write this down, but the only difference between that size and this is a large size, is the nose and the chin darts are the same width. They're an 1.5 inch from center point out on both sides, and then on the same on the top and the chin. The other difference is, besides the initial cutting size of the fabric, which is a 11 by 8, is the elastic on these is 6 inches on each side. It didn't need that extra 1/2 inch on each side because it was already a substantial difference in size than just the main fabric alone. So that is it. If you have questions or comments, please be kind. This is my very first video ever, and I wanted to make one because I had a lot of people asking me the details of these in particular, how I was doing that. And so instead of doing individual chat sessions each time, I decided to go ahead and just kind of make a quick video, and hopefully it helps. If you can make any type of mask, whether it's this, the basic one, there's I don't know, so many different styles out there, it doesn't really matter. I think any of them are working just fine. Please just make them, and yeah, do what you can. Thank you. Bye.